All right, Gary, thanks for joining me today. So you are on the ground in Minneapolis for VCon. Tell us what this event is that you've been working on and what you expect to see.
VCon is the utility part of a NFT project I launched last year to stand up an intellectual property called VFriends. When I launched VFriends way back in May 2021, which seems a billion years ago in NFT land, I knew that most people weren't taking advantage of the smart contract, and I felt that the art and collectible part of NFT land was very interesting. I like that stuff, but the real game was what the smart contract is, and I figured the biggest value that I could bring in the infrastructure I had was a super conference, the things I was affected by going through the game in Web 2, like South by Southwest and others. And so VCon is the first, VCon this year is the first of 3 conferences that I'm throwing that came with the first NFT Series 1 VFriend.
All right, so there is a lot to talk about there, and we'll certainly get to it, but you're on the ground now. What is it like to see this in person happening?
It's crazy. You know, I'm a huge football fan. US Bank Stadium here in Minnesota is one of the newest football fields in the world, and it's a remarkable venue. And you know, the excitement's there. I mean, the lines are already huge this morning. We had the kickoff party last night that went tremendously well. And you know, to be frank, I'm just kind of focused on over-delivering to the thousands of people that have attended this event.
Right. You have a lot of celebrities from different industries attending. I want to talk in a bit about the growing interest in NFTs within Hollywood, but I also want to ask, because there's been some criticism within the space about the level of education that these celebrities actually offer when it comes to NFTs, to different crypto projects, especially at such a fragile time for the market. So where do you stand on that right now?
I'm in agreement. I think there's, you know, whether you're a celebrity, an influencer on Twitter or anywhere else, I think right now the overwhelming energy of the space is very short term. I would call it greed. I think that many are not spending their time on education, teaching people about seed phrases or cold storage on a ledger, or how to even have connect the MetaMask, or how to buy Solana or Ethereum. This happens all the time. Web 2, Web 1, things that I've lived through, reading the history books of other big moments of innovation. You know, obviously because of who they are, celebrities are going to get a lot of the attention, and they have responsibility with the size of their audience. But I would tell you that it's not super exciting out there. Most people are focused on the short-term economics. There's far more Wall Street DNA than, let's say, historical Silicon Valley DNA. There's a lack of patience. Everybody wants to know how much their NFT went up. And the reality is, all that behavior is going to lead to 97, 98% of these current projects losing value over the next 24, 36 months because the supply and demand curves will not work out. So, look, I think anybody involved in this space has to give a lot of thought to, is the short-term money worth the reputational risk?
Why do you see a lot of that growing interest within Hollywood?
I think everything in new digital form that has money along with it really always captures LA, San Francisco, and New York's attention. And so, you know, to be frank, I don't see such an overwhelming Hollywood involvement in NFT land. I think there's far less celebrities involved in NFT land than there should be, to be frank. So I think it gets the headlines, but the Snoops of the world, the Reese Witherspoons of the world, they're very far and few between in comparison. I would argue that even though the headlines are there, that the adoption is actually way smaller than it should be.
So clearly there's been a lot of interest in NFTs from all kinds of brands across all different kinds of industries. Is there a particular industry, music, art, fashion, that you think is best positioned to utilize this technology?
That's a great question. You know, I would say events. I think event businesses should really get serious about NFT land yesterday. And here's why. If you're watching right now and you're in the live events business, issuing a ticket to an event in the form of a QR code or a affirming email is technology that is excellent compared to paper, but nowhere close to the high value that NFT can be for you. Because if you're a Coachella, if you're a Comic-Con, if you're the Super Bowl, the ability to issue the actual ticket being an NFT, which then gets scanned at event, and then that ticket becomes a collectible that you, the issuer, have a royalty on in perpetuity, becomes a revenue stream in perpetuity. If you go on eBay right now and see how many tickets are sold in the last year, and the people and events that issued those tickets get $0 of that, going forward, I think that is going to be the industry that's short-term and highest impact in NFT innovation.
It reminds me, I wanted to ask you, you've got a membership NFT sort of situation going with a restaurant in New York City. What's the current state of that? How has that project been going? What kind of interest have you seen, and where are you on that timeline?
David Rodolitz, my partner, I'm sure is watching right now and is excited for that question because he is putting the final touches on our location in New York. So we're still on track for Q4, Q1 next year, but what we've been doing to keep interest and intrigue and value to the NFT holders of Fly Fish Club is we've already done pop-up events in Florida, in New York, the Hamptons. There's one here in Minnesota this weekend for the holders of Fly Fish Club. So this is what's so cool about the blockchain. We know who the users are because we know who owns the actual NFT, and our ability to innovate and execute pop-ups or anything else is very high given the technology. And so we're keeping them happy and engaged while we finally break ground and open here next year.
What are some of the challenges that you have had with the restaurant, or that even the events industry could have on the regulation front? You know, I've been covering crypto for a while, so I know a lot of people working on a lot of crypto projects, new and old, can tell you, what all of the regulation challenges are, the securities law risks are with airdrops, NFTs, et cetera, but it's really new territory for something that's not crypto native like the event space. So what are some of the things that people looking to use NFT and the technology that powers it for their business, what should they keep in mind?
I think for me, I launched an e-commerce web business back in 1997, and we didn't understand what the tax ramifications were from shipping state to state, credit card liabilities. If somebody put their credit card into your website and had it stolen, were you responsible? Anytime you're going into new territory, I mean, all the things I want to do with VeeFriends to bring value to my holders, to your point, are still unclear, and we have to wait for government clarity. I think we'll get that. I think, to your question, everybody has to tread smartly. You can't make assumptions. You have to play within the rules. For me, I love regulation because it creates clarity for innovation. And so that's kind of what I'm waiting for. Anybody who's trying to do an events business, as long as they're not trying to get too far into securities law, I think a lot of things are clear enough today to navigate. But your point's well taken. I mean, for everybody who's watching at home, it's that early. It's that early, and for a lot of you watching, you do remember Internet 95, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you might be able to remember how hard it was. People were getting their credit cards stolen. We were paying $2 to be on the internet after your CD time on AOL had run out. So the early days of everything is quite confusing and has a lot of brouhaha to it, and we're navigating it.
So within advertising, you're also CEO of VaynerMedia. What's the advertising space like with NFTs? We've been following companies like AMC who are using them to promote new film releases, for instance. You see more companies looking to use them, and what does that timeline look at, again, considering this fragile moment that we're at the market?
The fragile moment is in the valuations, things we care about, you, me, the audience. But the consumer behavior and adoption is growing very rapidly. This is like 98, 99, 2000 internet stocks. The internet stocks by Wall Street were grossly overvalued, and there was an internet crash, and people were like, oh, the internet's a fad. Meanwhile, consumers were using it like crazy, and only growth was going on at that time. Same's happening right now. In the correction of NFT pricing and crypto pricing, that is not slowing down the adoption of people in the game buying their first NFTs, buying a Solana for the first time or an Ethereum. And so brands, they don't care about what the value is. They care about our customers doing it, and can I use that as a gateway to create consideration for them to buy my soda, my sneaker, whatever that company is selling. And so we're seeing huge demand. Avery, our president, Vayner NFT, has never been busier, from Pepsi to Bear Paint to Budweiser. We are bombarded on a daily basis. A lot of brands are making the mistake of working with their creative agencies to do a campaign in NFT land that is often tone deaf, doesn't understand the Discord and Twitter communities, doesn't understand the security vulnerabilities, and we have seen a lot of sloppy work. On the flip side, we've seen brands really lean into what is a profound thing, which is, for the first time ever, we can see marketing as a profit center. If the Fortune 500s really lean in and understand what NFTs can be, what the perceived value of them can mean to their actual CPG sales or things of that nature, we could be seeing profit coming out of marketing behaviors, which is unheard of for the Fortune 5,000 CFOs that are watching this right now. And if they're intrigued by that, they should do a lot of homework.
So a lot of interest in NFTs. You just rattled off several names, a lot of moving parts, especially in these big organizations. What do you think the time horizon is for many of these projects?
You know, I think the timeline is for people that are trying to get B2B value or some press out of it. They're in the game now. I think every industry looks slightly different. If you're in gaming or youth culture, Gen Z, young millennials, you can start playing in that game a little bit now. But I think 24 to 36 months from now, you're just going to be seeing a lot more behavior from brands in this world. I think QR codes on pack that lead to NFTs, buy a subscription, get an NFT as your receipt. So, you know, my intuition is 24 to 36 months, you'll be seeing a lot more marketing NFT behavior from the biggest brands in the world.
In recent weeks, a big drop-off in NFT sales. Prices have fallen too. Is this tied to recent market volatility alone? And what do you think needs to change to get users interested in the space again?
I don't think so. I don't think this is just Ukraine, inflation, the global markets down. I think it's probably 70% of it, 50% of it. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, there was too much gold rush interest and people just flipping. The core foundational interest is growing. The people that come in for a quick flip, call it Beanie Babies versus stuffed animals. The Beanie Baby crowd needs to lose in their day trading for them to leave, and then you get settled in. And so, you know, I view this pretty much as March 2000 in internet stock land. You got rid of a lot of the bad behavior, a lot of the greed, a lot of the day trading, short-term greed, and you started having the foundational investors focused on it. I think from the investing standpoint, that's what we're seeing on the NFT front, but we're seeing more and more utilities. There's a lot of people here for VCon that own the NFT, just to be at the conference for the next 3 years. I think as companies and entrepreneurs start to understand that it is utility first with a hint of collectability instead of the era we're in right now, which is collectability with a tiny hint of utility. Once we make that flip as operators, I think we'll see a very different result in the ecosystem.